I'm Dream Queen, and you're in the cab on the road with me and my guest, Barbara Branche. Barbara is a social justice warrior, artisan, respected elder, and friend. I asked her to roll with me and talk story and share some of the wisdoms that she's gathered. We will time jump with her back to the Vietnam War era, where she came of age, traveling, protesting, and doing direct action for peace and civil rights. Then to 2017 and her experiences in D.C. at the Not My President rally. Barbara has put her safety on the line along with many others to stand for a more equitable United States. We talk about her time as a merchant on the Pow Wow Trail on the East Coast and her life in the fringe southwestern town of Madrid, New Mexico in the 1970s and today. Mostly, we talk about being a decent human being. Barbara, thanks for joining me and having me over to your home and this beautiful backyard. How long you been in Madrid?
50 years. I came August of 1974. I had taken a road trip back in 72. We had done like 12,000 miles in 1 month, and coming through New Mexico, we just did a bit of a loop. And then I found that when I went back to Pennsylvania that New Mexico started calling my name. And so eventually I put my dog and some stuff in the car and didn't know anybody in New Mexico. I've been given a couple phone numbers in Santa Fe and called them. When I got, at first when I went across the country so fast, I sort of hung in the southern part of Colorado because I knew once I dropped into New Mexico I was going to be home. So I called one of the couples in Santa Fe, and they said, well, what are you looking for? And I said, well, I don't want to pay at that time in 74 $500 a month rent. And so they said, well, go out to Cerrillos, talk to Todd Brown. I drove out to Cerrillos, stopped at Mary's Bar. At the stop sign, there was a guy talking to somebody in a truck, and I asked if they knew where Todd Brown is. He says, who's asking? I told him. He goes, I'm Todd Brown. So everything sort of fell together like that, and I got a job in Santa Fe, and I stayed for a week down in Cerrillos, and Billy Cunningham, who used to live in one of the houses coming into town here, and she said, well, come live over here, and I did, and then everybody told me to go down to the pick out a house, go down to the tavern, talk to Joe Huber, because it was still Albuquerque Cerrillos Coal Company. And he had 3 questions. One, do you have a car? I said, yes. Do you have a job? As soon as I got here, I got a job in Santa Fe. And can you handle it? Well, my house had no electricity, no water, no windows, 1 door. And I said, no problem, I can handle it. And so started out with plastic on the windows and moved up to plexiglass, and then finally moved up to glass. Well, there is 1 original window, so it was all windows were out except for 1, and that window is actually still in the house. And I love that one of my friends that I was working with in Santa Fe, she said, oh, you're in Madrid? Can I come? And at this point, there's only like 42 people or something. She goes, can I come spend the weekend? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So she came out, and she was sleeping on the floor in the front room. She got woken up by a whole line of miners walking through with their metal lunch boxes. Well, about 4 months ago, one of the musicians that was down here, his girlfriend said, oh, my sister and her husband lived in your house for a while you were gone. I said, oh, that's nice. She goes, I've got a ghost story. I said, well, I'm busy. I'll come back. But I never had a chance to get back to her. But on her way out the door, real quick, I said, well, here's my ghost story. And I told her about the miners. She goes, that's exactly the same story I was going to tell you. My house is on the property where the hotel was. And the Lamb Hotel had burned down in the 1920s. And in the 30s, when they were moving the road so that the Arroyo wouldn't run through the center of town, and they were putting it on the other side of the railway easement, there was a little house sitting like on Opera House Road, a little house sitting in the middle of what was now going to be the new road, and they picked it up and moved it over here, and so that's my house. And I was by myself, so I just needed a little house.
I want to go back to 12,000 miles in how many days?
A month. I had spent a year hitchhiking around Europe, and while I was there, I met this guy who was a multimedia artist from Australia who was living in England. I met him in Denmark at international sauna where people from all over the world, for $1.65, you could get a mattress on the floor and you had your own sleeping bag and everything. And so he was one of the people I met there. And then when I went to England, I met up with him again, and he had taken a photo of another woman and I laying opposite, head to head, sort of holding hands, talking, and it was in the Royal Art Gallery show. So I was naked in the Royal Art Gallery. I love it. I love it. So he came to America, and we were just coming out of Vietnam, and it was interesting. Somebody from out of the country being so critical of America. I mean, like a lot of the things were like you had the 20-foot high Paul Bunyan and things like that. I mean, he just really had no comprehension of having figures like that around America, and it was very interesting. At the end of the trip, I said, "Don't ever contact me ever again." I felt he wasn't open really for conversation. It was more, not liking it. Well, here, goodbye. Don't like it, leave. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
I'm curious about your opinion on how we have dissent and still love where we live. We got together talking about protest and your time on the road during the Vietnam War era. Where was your heart at during that time?
Well, okay, so when I was growing up, my family was a Purple Heart family. And my uncle had been in World War II and got the Purple Heart. My grandmother was the national chaplain for the Women's Auxiliary of the Purple Heart for about 45 years. And then my mother took over after her. And so I was always raised with people that had gone to war. And basically I was very opposed to war. I mean, I was the only person in my high school that had a peace sign on their locker. It had to be on the inside because I couldn't have it on the outside because it was, I just felt they were very unconscious as to what was going on. Everybody's got a different walk. I mean, people during those days would spit at people who came back from Nam. Well, everybody's got a different walk. I have respect that you are walking your walk, and if that's what your walk is, then who am I to say? So after high school, I went to a small college in Vermont. There was Free Vermont, which was an organization throughout Vermont for those of us that were not liking a lot of what was going on. And it was kind of funny. The guy who wrote the anarchist cookbook actually was there too. And we'd have little meetings down in the small town where my college was. And there'd be like the FBI leaning against the cars. I mean, they were like, so, their trench coats, I mean, like that, or their suits. I mean, they were like, that's them. It was like so funny. So I'm sure that they probably had my name and were watching me even then. And so we did little protests in Vermont. Where one time when Harry Kissinger and Rockefeller and all those guys met in Woodstock, Vermont, they all landed and came on a bus to the hotel that they were having the meeting. Well, in those days, there weren't cameras everywhere. So my girlfriend and I, she's like watching my back, and I'm trying to let air out of the tires of the bus just to give them delay. And it was like so funny. It's like these tires, just to take enough out to give anybody a delay would have taken hours. Oh my God. But that was kind of funny because, they were willing to talk to you and shake your hand because there was only about 100 of us, and, they were being very cordial and answering questions that we had and all. So it was interesting.
How did your family feel about your peacemaking?
My mother was very cool about it. My father had no idea how to deal with me about it. I mean, he knew less about that because I knew he didn't really know how to deal with it. So he didn't know everything. But my mother, I told my mother was like very supportive. My mother was always supportive of women's rights and abortion, and my mother was right there. And my dad just really didn't understand some of it. So,
Can you explain the national chaplain of the Women of the Purple Heart?
Women's Auxiliary. Whenever there was like a big conference or smaller conferences, they would go and, just open it up and, with blessings and stuff. So,
Was your family religious?
my grandmother was a Sunday school teacher. My grandfather basically went to church because she went to church. My parents, not really much. My parents didn't, especially my dad, didn't like my friends when I was in junior high and beginning of high school, so they put me in a all-girls Episcopal school. So I had the Episcopal going on. My grandmother had been Methodist. My other grandmother was Lutheran. And with being the Episcopal school, they would have different heads of different kinds of religions come in. And I would go to synagogue with my friends on Friday. And then I would sometimes go to the Catholic Church with my friends on Sunday. There was a priest that knew he was going to swear one day because he gets so excited, but he never did. But, so I had, I looked at a lot of things. When I was 11 years old, I was writing to the Rosicrucians. So, 12 years old, writing a little paper on the Unitarian. So I just always felt connected to Creator. Sometimes I feel like I have a very strong thread. And sometimes I'm like, where did the thread go? When you don't have your thread, to Creator, you can call Creator whatever you want to call Creator, God, whatever. It's a really different thing when you have that thread. I love all these people these days being, Christian in name only, and you would say something about thread, and they'd go, huh, what? They have no idea, because most people that have a spiritual life of whatever, to the energy, knows what that thread is. So, they've been generations of being Christians, and most of those have not had any spirituality. And so they're just a name only. Jesus wouldn't have even been one of them, because, they're racist and they're just, they hate everybody, and anything that's different than them, oh boy, and it's like, they have no idea. It's really sad, I was thinking about how the Bible's a copywritten book, like your spirituality, you can have things brought in to you that are helpful, but your spirituality has nothing to do with a book. It has to do with you and how you treat other people, how you treat yourself. And, that we all have to do the best we can with that and just love each other. Yeah, because we really have to have that love going on. Because if not, it's really sad for humanity.
How do you find your thread when you feel like you're losing it?
I just try and have a little more kind of meditation with it and, try and connect to it again.
Is nature part of it?
Yeah, I just don't go out walking as much as I used to. But, to go out walking here, you get to walk around town and not go over the hill because it's all private property. You used to be able to go out and go for a whole day walk and back and, or go up to the Ortiz and like haul wood or whatever. And you can't do any of that anymore because it's private property. I thought at one point about becoming a realtor, and it's like I couldn't sell it because we all own it. When I was gone from here, God knows how many people lived in my house. I'm a madroid. When I left, it was like $75 up to $100 a month rent. That was a long time ago. Yeah.
What drew you to the peace movement, speaking of spirituality and threads?
Well, I just really felt with what we were doing, like in Vietnam, which was, the main war of my younger days, was really something that we really shouldn't have been in. And I felt it was, once again, one of those, let's go get, their oil and Like I understand about China and Russia trying to like force people, but we still shouldn't have been there. I don't think we should have been there. I mean, and talking to people who were like Marines or whatever during that time. I mean, I knew one guy whose unit for Vietnamese to go on to their next level, you could not have any parts of your body taken off.
Are you talking about for the afterlife?
Yeah, and so they would take ears. That particular group of Marines would take ears to make sure these people's spirit life wouldn't go on. And I just felt that it was such a wrong thing, and I certainly didn't like the draft. I helped send people to Canada when I was in Vermont, and I just felt that it was really important. And during that time was the whole abortion question was up too, and civil rights, and I just felt that it was like a lot of my life was spent in Trenton, New Jersey, where it's like 60%, 65% black, and it's like, yeah, so and with the abortion, it was Our Bodies Ourselves, the book Our Bodies Ourselves, which is a fabulous book for women. It talks about all of our health care. I think we should send some to Congress and Senate and have them all mandatorily have to read it. Oh, but it would be banned. Wait a minute. And, of course, then again, everybody would read it then if it's a banned book. And it had like one little inch-long paragraph in there about abortion. And so my girlfriend and I got in my car, went to Boston and packed it up full of cases of Our Bodies Ourselves and drove them back to Vermont. And, there's certain things where like, go ahead and bust me. I don't want to get busted, but so, just doing things like that to keep women informed. You need a hand to go somewhere and get help. You got us, and because we had started a women's center. Because it was like war, civil rights, women's issues. I mean, women's issues is part of civil rights, but we get pulled out of there somewhere else. And it's just so ridiculous because it's not inclusive. And a lot of these people they don't even know what women's health care is. They have no clue. I mean, abortion's a very small part of it. When I went to protest in 71 was May Day, and being one of 15,000 people getting arrested, I mean that was a pretty traumatic demonstration down there. We stayed on the island in the Potomac. It was a full campground of people. We had our Free Vermont group, and everybody had all the phone numbers that you would need if you got arrested, like written on us with permanent magic marker, so that we would be, able to contact somebody if we got arrested. Well, when we did get arrested, being part of the 15,000 people that got arrested, first we went to the Coliseum and had our brothers in arms in the National Guard putting guns at us, and we'd like go around and talk to them about like, hey, we're just your brothers and sisters down here, that you've got guns on. And so then they packed us up from there, and then we went and they took us on a bus to the Justice Department and put us on this elevator that took the bus. And we went down at least 2 stories for how long we were on the elevator. Could have been 3. And there was jail cells down there and everything. And that's where they have a picture of me singing "We Shall Overcome" in my FBI file. Then when we were underground there in the jail, it was divided where it was the men and then the women. And the men they kept in the cells. Just people had to take turns standing up and sitting down, and they spray them with the fire hoses. And one of the churches had gone to McDonald's and bought out a McDonald's and sent all that food down to us. I mean, like, how did they even know we were there, But that's when the women, they let the doors open. We could just walk around the little hallway there. And so then they fingerprinted us. So I can't do anything bad with my hands anymore. And unless I get rid of my fingerprint. And one of the people that I remember there was sitting over in the corner was this woman who was, okay, I'm going to be 75 in a couple weeks, but she had to have been 80, I think. And, she's sitting there and she's got her long white hair, and I'm like, she's somebody I'm keeping in my mind, because she's like coming from what she believes to go up against.
How old were you at that time? Like 20?
Yeah, let's see. I was born in 49. So, like 20, yeah. I don't feel like I was 21 because I was still in college. So maybe I was like 19. So, on the streets, it was just packed with protesters, and the cops would be coming through in their motorcycles and on their horses. And when you're in a very dense crowd with horses and motorcycles coming at you, I remember my friend and I would just grabbed hold of each other's hands and went down an alley, and just sort of got out of it for just a little bit so we could just breathe. And of course, there was cops on every corner, and we'd be talking to them about what are you doing? You should be with us. I got to say that it was funny. After doing May Day, I went. That's when I went for a year hitchhiking around Europe. I'm in Paris. I'm walking down the street with somebody I met, and all of a sudden there's a demonstration coming down the street. I guess I had gotten some PTSD from Washington, and I'm like, I don't drink wine really. Ran in and had a couple glasses of wine. I'm like, okay. But it was just almost getting engulfed in one was oh, that was a little scary for me. And then it was after the Orange Man was inaugurated the next day with the women's movement, but it was the same thing. It was war, civil rights, and women's issues. And it's just crazy to pull women's issues out of civil rights. I don't understand, the mentality of people just not thinking. And they threw out all those. We actually went into the courtroom. They took us all into the courtroom, individually, or maybe 10 at a time or something. And eventually that all just got tossed out. So I don't have a record.
But they still have your fingerprints.
Well, they have my fingerprints and my picture of singing "We Shall Overcome."
Do you have a copy of that picture?
Yeah, no, I wish I did. I can still see it in my mind getting on the bus, when they were taking everybody's picture and we were all singing. Bella Abzitz is the one who invited us to the steps of the Capitol building.
Say the name again.
Bella Abzitz. She was a senator from New York. She invited everybody, and then they were saying we're going to arrest everybody, and okay, so we all got arrested. So.
15,000 people.
Yeah.
How did they corral you all?
They had to have had us in different places, because I know we were in the Coliseum, and I know we went underground.
How big was the whole march?
It was packed. How concerts are really packed. You think about all the being really packed like that. And the one thing about when you're in a protest like that, you get somebody, for example, climbing up a light post, and they're being really loud and trying to agitate people. Well, you don't listen to that person because that's a government setup there. So you just, anybody that's going like that, you just ignore them because they're the ones that'll get you really, really in trouble. But 15,000, I don't know where everybody went.
Where was the May Day March? Was it on the National Mall?
It was all over. And after going to 45's Not My President March in Manhattan, I let one of the young people that we took with us, my friend and I that went, I said to her, you go to Washington and you protest, they will gas you and beat you. You go to New York City and you're anywhere around Central Park, the real estate is so high there, they will only beat you. Because they're not going to gas you because people have $6 million apartments.
What year was Not My President?
It must have been 17. Yeah.
Did you have a banner that you marched under at that time? Or a group?
Not collectively. My friend and I, when we went, I took a bunch of sage. So then we ended up marching with some native people too, because I was just burning the sage, and they're like, "Oh yeah." So yeah, that was a really wonderful. It was interesting though. Before, when protesting basically the same stuff, when we stayed on the island in the Potomac, this time my friend said, you pay for the gas and tolls, and I'll pay for where we stay. So I did, and we stayed at a more higher end hotel in the cheapest room that they had. I guess I don't know, but I just thought it was like so interesting, you know. But the day before the day of Orange Man's inauguration, people were burning cars and stuff in the streets in Washington. And so on the day of the Women's March, in the evening, it was interesting how the burning cars all of a sudden turned into the Women's March on the news. There was like hardly any break at all in this incident and this gathering. I went, whoa, look at that. They're making the Women's March look like they were burning cars. And that was like, you know, there were a lot of supportive men and a lot of children. Of course, the way they're killing children these days, you know, hey.
Tell me about advice you were giving the younger generation at the 2017 march.
Making sure that you had contact phone numbers. And the other was like, because of the gas, you could take and have vinegar-soaked neckerchiefs. They work really well with gas, so you could be, you know, still being able to breathe.
How to be brave when you're looking at all those cops on the horses with batons and guns. How do you go out then versus today?
Well, today I don't run as fast, so just feeling that, you know, it was the right focus. You know, it was like pro-humanity. And the other's so much more anti-humanity that it was important to just believe that you were in the right, you know, and what was best for the planet and for humans. I mean, because, you know, forever there's been war. And forever there's been protesters. And it's like you need people in the government that want to change it. And you need people on the street. Because you need both of those aspects. And you need for everybody to talk to each other. And, you know, I mean, I know there's a group of people in America now, they'd rather shoot us than have a conversation. And they're the ones saying this is, you know, God's will. And it's like, yeah, you got to be kidding yourself. You know, at the end of the world, they say like 2/3 of the population is going to be wiped out. Well, we're making good count on that now. I think the Antichrist has come. You know, we just have to find our threads the best we can to like keep us hopeful. You know, what are we hoping for? To be able to live some sort of life, be able to, you know, have a little bit of a roof over your head and help people that don't and find ways of helping them and not putting them in mental hospitals. I mean, it's just gotten so out of hand. And like people support these people that support the idea of like somebody's homeless, put them in a mental hospital. Well, some people have been, you know, a lot of these guys are veterans, and a lot of veterans do not live under a roof. My son's dad was in the Army during Vietnam. He hasn't lived under a roof for any serious length of time since Vietnam. And he's not alone. I mean, you know, you go up into the mountains and you run into somebody, most likely that guy is a vet. And, you know, it's just not caring about people. Even when I was leaving Walmart one day, not too long ago, a guy had his vet hat on. And it was one moment I did stop and nicely gave him my receipt because that's not always how it happens. And I said, and you fought for us to have freedom so we could come and shop, didn't you? He goes, yes, I know. You know, I mean, I'm supporting, but I'm not supporting. I mean, I just, you know, I'm sort of like that middle of the road with veterans just because of the fact that they're walking their walk. And now their walk, because of the unseen wounds even, is so detrimental to their having a fully healthy walk. And some are coming out fine, but, you know, like all the Desert Storm and all. I mean, it's just been like one after another. And, so it's hard for everybody. I mean, nobody's got it easy these days.
Do you still dream a broader dream for us?
I do. But it almost gets stopped once I get over the hill. I mean, part of moving here was, a lot of us didn't want to live out there. Most everybody that came here in the early days didn't want to live out there. I mean, Abby Hoffman used to live here. He also lived in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where I'm also from. And, it's like, wow. I mean, in his book, Skating in the Ice Age, one of those chapters is about him being in Madrid. A lot of us came here because we didn't want to live out there. And I mean, nothing against individuals, but I mean, I don't know. If you have enough money to buy some of these houses these days, man, you're not coming to where you thought you were coming to because you've just killed it. Yeah. They're going to change the tax base so much that we're not allowed to live here anymore. I love that ARP at one point, after I turned 55, I joined ARP like many others. And in one of the ARP monthly magazines, it was like 5 places in America to move to retire, and Madrid was one of them. I went, what? These people better be stable and not running around on their walker because, it's not going to be an easy walk around town for them. I mean, I hate that we didn't have enough money to be able to keep the railway easement or the ballpark, but we're basically a poor town, and there's nothing wrong with people being poor. I mean, like, some of us just don't have the capitalist gene where it's profit over people, and it's not because we smoked pot or took LSD or whatever. It was because that's how our hearts were. We have a right to live somewhere too. Supposedly still, the thought still is that only a third of your income should be for your housing. And like most people now, it's like 80% of your income is for your housing. And that's insane. I mean, it's just going into somebody's pocket. During the pandemic when these people couldn't pay their rent because they couldn't go to work, and then they get thrown out on the street because somebody's, they couldn't cover their own mortgage on the buildings that they bought for income. I mean, I've had a little Wall Street job where I followed insurance companies for institutional investors, and I understand about a lot of the insurance stuff. And the stock market, they're just like it's a big casino. There's so many billionaires now. There used to be only 1 or 2 billionaires in the whole world, and now there's like, we're working on our way up to there's a couple trillionaires. You could support a country, and you're just taking it for your own greed and making the biggest and better ship that you can cruise around on. And I don't know, I have no concept of that as to being a healthy human thing. And I mean, like, you could just take one of them and they could donate half of their billions, and we could figure out a real solution for most of the people that are homeless. You try and help people. I understand there's a lot of mental illness on the street. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. And, there's no place for those people to, go. And they don't have to go and get shot up and just be like zombies. There could be places where it could be more humane and take care of people's mental illnesses. And a lot of people really, it's too claustrophobic for them to live inside. And, you can't sleep in a public area. So, make an area where people can sleep outside that want to sleep outside. People go, I'm not my brother's keeper. Well, hell no, you are. I mean, I keep working on trying to be more giving than I am. I mean, it's not easy, You have to work on that. You have to make a conscious effort. And so I try, and I know I need to try more.
Singer-songwriter Jerry Ferris, Barbara's partner, joins us for a brief musical break with his own composition, My Country, 'Twas of Thee.
I wrote it the day after the El Paso shootings. So it's been a while, 17, but still. My country, 'twas of thee, now that's all history. Where did it go? Gone is the pilgrim's pride, gone is the heart inside, sold away for hate and homicide, tragic senseless things. One nation under God turned to a firing squad. How can this be? Where is equality? Where now is unity? Our poor land of the brave and free, where did it go? Fate now is in our hands. Now we must understand, we the people live. Once we were the melting pot, now guns are sacred, life is not. Somehow we must refuse this lot or lose to tragedy. My country is of thee, let it not be history, we the people live.
Now let's talk about boundaries a little bit. That's a big part of loving ourselves and others. As you get older and wiser, are you more confident in expressing boundaries?
Like working at the tavern, for example. Somebody came in with a red hat that had a certain name on it. And they overheard me say something about their hat. And they said something to me about what I said about their hat. I said, well, we like to be apolitical right here. So I run into a lot of people who are like totally not on the same page. And not just for their tip money, but because they're another human. I'm going to treat them just like I treat everybody else. Sometimes it's hard, and then in the community, I mean, there are some people that are way on the other side. I mean, like, it used to be that it was basically apolitical and people that are way to the left here. Now there's, some people that really are not in that at all. And, just hoping we can keep a balance, because we don't want that down in the canyon here or in the community, the overall community. I mean, because there used to only be a couple hundred people in the mid-'70s that lived outside of town here. Now there's thousands. And I think everybody's welcome as long as, they're happy to be a part of and not try and be a controlling factor of. There's people that suggest that, people that have these political views go over here and those people that have those political views go over there. Well, I think it's really great if we share our views because then we grow. And if we do that, then we just keep the same thing going. And that's just stupid. When I first moved here, when I had my son, there were like 75 of us, and we all had a bunch of babies. And I got mastitis, and so I couldn't nurse for a couple weeks. And two of the women in town nursed my son for me. while I was recovering, or would bring over goat's milk or stuff. Because it was like, we really did take care of literally took care of each other. And I'm so happy that we do like bingo or GoFundMe or different things for the community. That I think that's really important, as long as the GoFundMe's not for a for-profit business. If I know 20 people well or fairly well, I'm happy. I don't have to know all 205 people, and if I do, that's fine. If not, because people go, oh, you work at the tavern. Yeah, and there's like less than 1% of the town that go to the tavern. Right. It's a very small percentage. Right. I like working the tourists and greeting them and sending them off on a merry little trip through New Mexico. Right. And reminding them to go to Native American things, because they, a lot of white folks really forget this is a Native American state, really, even though it's only like 34% or something now, but it's still a Native American state. And I send people to Bandelier, Acoma, I send people to go and see what this is, because the land is always who the people are, always, no matter what you build on it.
What do people think they're getting when they come here? Wild hogs?
Yeah, like wild hogs, that sort of thing, and like just the art.
A lot of the art is Native American art.
I know. It's true.
There's been historically a lot of rhetoric that Native Americans are extinct or live only on reservations, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people still have no idea.
I remember being at a powwow. Where was it? I don't know where it was. But I used to sell at powwows from upper New York State down to North Carolina. And I remember doing a powwow, and I had just finished a conversation with a couple Lakota people, and they were like 100% Native, and they weren't all Lakota. Maybe they had something else, another Native in there, and within 5 minutes, somebody started arguing with me about that. I said, "Would you go over and talk to that guy right there, and you tell him what you think, because he'll let you know." I just, people have no clue.
So what took you to the powwow trail?
Well, I have some Lenape and some Cherokee, and I do not have a tribal card. And when I was selling on the powwow trail, everything I sold was authentically Native American made. So I'd get invited to powwows where you had to have a card, because a lot of people that were Native that were selling stuff made in China. So I would be invited, to the powwows, and so I had run a trading post for a while. I walked out of that job because the guy was taking silver and American turquoise to India and having it made. And so when he started doing that, I was like getting ready to walk out the door. And then one day he just went too far, because somebody had come in the store and they came up to me and they said, when you quit here, you're just going to be there just like that. And so when they told me that, because I worked like 80, 90 hours a week there, and I started just moving out like my cooking stuff and my extra change of clothes and, just stuff that I brought because I was there so much every week. And he was turned in by one of our Native friends, Navajo guy, and they just looked at the store, and the way I was doing the store was like, because of my experience, this is Navajo. I can tell because of this and this and this and this that this is, and the way the signature, and all stuff. And I knew what at least 5 or 6 imported signatures were, so hallmarks were. So I knew what was most of it that was imported was, and and he was still out on the trail, not powwow trail, but he was the #1 antique vintage seller of Native American jewelry in America. Just in the store on a normal day, we'd had 3,000 rings, stuff like that. And we just had so much stuff. And he was part Native too, and I couldn't believe when he was doing that, he had found a really great silversmith in Jaipur, And the guy's rings were fabulous, and I was supposed to tell people that they were made in his other shop. And so I would go, these are not native. They're fabulous, but they're not native. Now, if you want native, this is over here. And he would want them mixed in. I'm like, these are not, these are. Because I was not going to lie. I just couldn't do that. So then one day I just with a snap of my fingers, just walked out one day.
And you took a suitcase full of jewelry to the Powwow Trail after that.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your advice for young people looking for hope and a good life?
Well, first I'll find a way to really have good self-confidence. I mean, people will beat down your self-confidence, but you got to find a way to keep your self-confidence up. Try to observe as much as you can of how things are done. It may not be the way you want to do it, but it may stimulate a thought on how you would do it. And just, remember to have respect for each other. And then you get to help each other and learn more. I listen to a lot of these Gen X's about how the boomers ruined it for them. Well, they have no idea what we went through. And then what our parents went through. I mean, our parents, a lot of them were born right around the Depression or just after the Depression and so they came from a time of nothing. There's a book called War is a Racket that was written by a 5-star, 4-star, whatever the highest up kind of general you got. And, how the economy always is growing during time of war. And, after World War II, the whole world changed. And so we were, given great opportunities that hadn't been available because everybody had been living out in farms, and most everybody in towns were, doing town stuff, but most everybody else lived on farms. And figuring out how to grow food and stuff like that. I mean, maybe we're called the boomers because what happened with coming out of World War II and the whole civilization changing, that we were boom, we were all of a sudden, this is a whole new world. And kids want to talk about, how we've ruined it for them. Well, there are probably a lot of things that you're capable of and you don't know you're capable of yet. I mean, if I was in my 20s or 30s now, hell, I'd go to school for acupuncture. There's a number of things that I see that I would have done if I was aware of them when I was, because I have a BFA watercolor and metal sculpture. And after becoming a single parent, I never really went back to any of that because I had to go really go to work. And, but, just really have confidence in yourself, and then you can figure out what your likes are and go out and go get it. Because they say, do what you love to do and a lot will follow. A lot of times that doesn't happen. But, you just have to observe how the world works. And I'm not just talking about how they work together, how things are made. Look at how things are made. Because, you might be able to make something that, could set you up for life. Or, you like one of the processes that makes those things over there. And, you'd be happy to just make that part to go into that over there. We have some hope, and, we have to keep having hope no matter what happens. And we don't want to become the Ukraine, and we don't want to become, Gaza. And, we don't want to be having a gun against each other. I mean, it's all over. I mean, countries in Africa, the way they fight, and, guerrilla warfare down in South America. And it's just... During Vietnam, I saw a thing that said to kill an American. I mean, we're just made up of so many other countries. I mean, we are the world. And I've always felt that America was to be become a one race. And, all people would be one. And Yeah. So I kind of have hope going in that direction that, we really become like an all one in that, like, well, you can't kill me because, look, I'm just like you. I mean, I think the democratic process essentially is really a good process. I mean, because it includes everybody. And, then you get people doing gerrymandering with voting and stuff. And these people are praised. And, well, they have great self-confidence. That's not the self-confidence I was talking about for young people to have. You just have to have faith in yourself and, sort of find your tribe, find, people that are like-minded and keeping the hope alive. But we've always had a difficult time. It's just, with the media, I mean, like, we get so much information. We get more information in a half hour than we used to get in a week. And, it blocks out some, it supports other stuff, but we don't even know how to handle it. I mean, and look at kids who have come in where all they've known is internet. I had basically run a telephone company for a while in the 90s. When AT&T got broken up, I ran a competitive local exchange carrier. And there was I think it was Lakota, a prophecy that the world was going to be smothered in a web. And then I realized that getting everybody all set up on the internet, because that was still pretty early in the internet, getting everybody all hooked up and like imagining how explosive that could be, it was like, I was really happy when I got out of that because I was just helping it. And I use it, but I don't help it anymore. Now, I went to see a friend in a nursing home the other day. And she was telling me about how Biden had just gotten found guilty of 3 charges. I went, no, it was his son. So I pulled up, has Joe Biden been convicted of any? Absolutely not. But because of how people only partly listen or only can partly hear, that, they're getting wrong information. And, go and look that up. We're not getting all truth from the internet, but you're going to get at least an answer to that question. You may have 4 or 5 answers to that question. 3 of them may say no, and 1 of them may say yes. But, where's that source? So, it's people not fully listening. And this Proposition 2025, I mean, that is like totally turning it into Nazi Germany. And we know that the opponent's dad was a Nazi. He had that Nazi book to read every night before he went to sleep. And, I mean, he's going to be killing everybody that's not white and orange hair. But we can just keep hoping that after all that's all said and done, because none of those last forever. It'll be generational, but, eventually people will get through it. And, you have to watch your lessons and learn them. You have to be open to learning what the lessons are. I mean, I used to really like to argue. I don't like to argue anymore. I'd rather have friends than have arguments. It makes life so much nicer. Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to argue. I'm going to respect your point of view and, as best I can. I mean, like, I'm still growing. And I just, want to keep it the best positive I can. And so, I mean, unconditional love is you got to work for that. And it's a good thing to work toward. And that's hopeful because if one person can make another person understand that, then they can make somebody else. I mean, it can be a chain reaction, which we would hope that it would be. And, we just care,
Thank you for being here with me, for
Oh, I
sharing with
loved it.
me and having me in your home, your
I
backyard.
truly love it.
Barbara Branche, fellow traveler, neighbor, artisan, social justice warrior. You've been in the cab on the road with us. Thank you so much for joining. Jerry's going to play us out with his composition for Barbara, Sun Woman Serenade. In the Cab Radio is produced by Jada White, aka Dream Queen. Original theme music produced by Baby Weekend Boys and Icky Mac the Beat Jugular. Learn more at In the Cab Radio at Linktree. Thank you so much for tuning in.